Welcome to the deep dive. Today, our mission is really to cut through all the online noise.
Right.
We want to give you a clear, detailed look at what happens when, well, what looks like an online feud maybe turns into something else.
Something much more serious, like a calculated, potentially unlawful business operation.
Exactly. We're focusing today on the anatomy of an alleged civil conspiracy. It seems centered around one individual and his controversial and apparently unlicensed private investigation firm.
That's the core of it. We're diving deep into the source material surrounding Jedidiah Brown and this entity he calls Investigate and Advocate, or INA.
And this deep dive feels necessary because, we're moving past just typical internet arguments here, aren't we?
Absolutely. We're looking at documented evidence, stuff that's forming the basis for a civil conspiracy lawsuit that's about to be filed by the plaintiff, Shay Sr.
The stakes seem incredibly high. The allegations are, well, pretty severe. We're having organized harassment, explicit threats of physical violence.
And importantly, across state lines.
Right, which, immediately makes you think federal issues.
Definitely. Plus, there are allegations about misusing the copyright system, the DMCA, for basically financial gain and censorship.
And just for context, we should note the sources show Jedidiah Brown and his group consistently use a derogatory term, middies, for Mr. Hall.
Yes, and we're only mentioning that to show the level of hostility here. It's documented in the source material. We're reporting it, not endorsing it, obviously.
Of course. So to really understand the legal claims, especially this civil conspiracy idea, you need a few key things, right?
That's right. Legally, for civil conspiracy, you're looking for three main elements. First, was there a meeting of the minds, like an agreement between people to do something?
An agreement.
Second, were there unlawful acts actually carried out by these people, the conspirators?
So they agreed, and then they did something illegal or wrong.
Exactly. And third, did those actions cause damages? Harm, basically. Financial, emotional, reputational.
Got it. Agreement, unlawful acts, damages. So to answer those questions for this situation, where do we start?
We have to start with the alleged ringleader, Jedidiah Brown. We need to look at his background, his history, and the, frankly, very questionable foundation of INA, his operation.
Okay, let's unpack that history then. Because the sources, they seem to paint a pretty consistent picture, like a recurring pattern of behavior.
It's very clear when you look chronologically. Jedidiah Brown has this documented, quite controversial history, especially when it comes to public causes, and crucially, how funds raised for those causes were handled.
Now, you're saying this isn't just like a one-off incident. This pattern connects to what's happening now.
It really seems to. This alleged pattern of, let's call it financial manipulation, or at least serious controversy, looks like a foundational piece for the current operation, INA.
So where does this pattern start? What's the first major example?
We have to go back a few years to the Kanika Jenkins case. A real tragedy, huge public attention, and importantly, a lot of fundraising happened around it.
Right, I remember that case.
And the sources detail significant controversy surrounding something called a Freedom Fund, set up related to the case. Specifically, questions about transparency.
What were the specific financial issues raised? What did the sources allege?
Well, the main thing was a lack of clarity about the ledger, basically the accounting of the funds. Reports suggest Jedidiah Brown allegedly got $30,000 from this fund,
Okay.
while another person involved, Andrew Holmes, apparently received $40,000. And when people started asking questions about this difference and just asking for details on where the money went,
What happened?
Brown allegedly tried to sort of play ignorant, refused to really account for what was documented on the ledger.
Wow. And how did people react to that? The public, others involved?
Not well. It was pretty harsh, actually. One source we reviewed just flat out called Brown a fucking fraud.
Strong words.
Very. And beyond just the money questions, there were claims he'd betrayed the family at the center of the case. But maybe the most telling part in terms of his methods is that after all this backlash, he basically vanished from the public scene for a while.
Okay, laid low.
Right. But then he resurfaced. And this part is almost hard to believe. He apparently made a claim, a demonstrably false claim, that he had died.
Wait, what? He claimed he died. Why?
It seems like it was a strategy, incredibly manipulative, to get attention and bring himself back into the public conversation after the controversy.
That is quite something. It speaks volumes about the level of manipulation the sources suggest he's capable of.
It really does.
So if we connect that back, this alleged habit of using causes, raising money, and then controversy follows.
Helps.
It seems central to what's being alleged now with INA.
It feels like the common thread, absolutely. You see this pattern pop up again later. He apparently raised funds for a new pet monkey named Cyro.
A monkey. Okay.
Yeah. But more relevant to this current case, he solicited a significant amount of money. We saw documentation of over $3,000 in one go for the supposed $100,000 INA headquarters.
Right, the headquarters in Harvey, Illinois.
Yeah.
What actually happened with that project? Did it get built?
It completely vanished, never materialized. Eventually, he claimed he had to pivot away from the whole headquarters idea.
Pivoted away. What was the reason given for abandoning it after raising funds?
He claimed he was facing the threat of arson, said someone was going to burn it down.
Arson. Huh.
And importantly, the host of the platform where he discussed this publicly, called the whole thing fraud right then and there, demanded refunds for people who donated.
So the allegation of fraudulent fundraising linked to INA itself isn't new. It predates this current conflict with Mr. Hall.
Exactly. It shows the alleged fundraising issues are tied directly to the INA enterprise from much earlier on.
Okay, so we have this background of alleged financial issues, manipulation. But the current lawsuit involves threats of actual violence.
Right.
Which brings us to another piece of his history, this established pattern of seemingly celebrating physical fights, specifically the Amir Shakur fight. Why is that important context?
Because it provides documented evidence that physical confrontation is, allegedly, a method he not only uses but seems to approve of, maybe even prefers, as a form of advocacy.
So this wasn't just a random scuffle, it was documented.
Oh, yeah. Thoroughly. It happened in Atlanta. It was caught on camera, and the YouTube channel Random News actually did a detailed breakdown of the footage. It was late, like 3:00 a.m., outside a gas station or convenience store.
And what was Brown's side of the story? What did he claim happened?
He described it as a pretty intense physical fight, claimed he got hit, kicked, scratched, even cut, and then he said he threw someone's phone into a bush.
Okay, so he acknowledges a physical altercation.
Yes, but here's the crucial part for context. Instead of treating it like, an unfortunate incident he'd rather forget.
He did the opposite.
Completely. He publicly celebrated it repeatedly, talked about his Chicago bobbing weave, referencing his defensive moves. It established this public persona of someone who not only gets into fights but brags about it afterwards, likes the confrontation.
That definitely adds context to later threats of physical violence. It suggests it's not just talk.
It suggests a potential willingness to resort to it, yes.
Yeah.
And during that same period, he started using language that, well, it sounded almost military.
How so?
He started referring to himself as a commander.
A commander.
Yeah, this idea of command, control, a hierarchy. It seems like that mentality then gets directly applied to the structure of investigate and advocate, INA, the very enterprise now facing this lawsuit.
Okay, so INA is the vehicle, the alleged illegal enterprise that allowed this whole thing to operate. He calls himself an investigative advocating journalist.
Right. That's his term for himself.
But he's running what looks like a private investigation firm. Why is Mr. Hall alleging INA is specifically an illegal PI business?
Well, the core allegation is that Brown simply doesn't have the required license to operate as a private investigator. And when this issue of legality came up publicly...
Yeah, what did Brown say?
His statements were strikingly contradictory, caught on video.
Contradictory how?
In one breath, he was recorded admitting, quote, "I fucked up," which strongly implies he knew he'd made a mistake or was operating outside the rules.
Okay, an admission of sorts.
But then, literally right after saying, "I fucked up," he immediately tried to backtrack and reassure everyone, saying, "It's all legal, I promise y'all, it's all legal."
Wow. So admit fault, then immediately deny any problem.
Exactly. That quick reversal is really significant because it suggests, potentially, that he knew there was a compliance issue, but was actively trying to cover it up publicly while, allegedly, continuing the unlicensed operation.
Okay, that clarifies the illegal enterprise part. Now let's get back to the legal definition of civil conspiracy. You mentioned the first element, meeting of the minds, an agreement.
Right.
How does Jedidiah Brown himself allegedly provide the evidence for that element? Seems like something people would try to hide.
You'd think so, but incredibly, he seems to have provided the evidence in his own words. Repeatedly, publicly.
How? What did he say?
He talks quite openly and often about having daily briefings with his private investigation team.
Daily briefings, like formal meetings.
That's exactly what it sounds like. A direct admission of regular, structured, coordinated meetings. Meetings presumably intended to plan and direct the actions of his INA operation.
And legally, that admission is huge for a conspiracy claim.
It's massive. It potentially fulfills that meeting of the minds requirement right there. It's an admission of deliberate organization and coordination, coming straight from the guy allegedly at the top.
Okay, so the foundation is this alleged illegal PI firm led by a self-styled commander with this history of celebrating violence and these alleged financial issues.
Right.
The next logical step, then, is to identify the network. Who are the people actually carrying out the alleged conspiracy's actions? Who are the key players involved in the harassment of Mr. Hall and his associates?
The sources are actually quite specific in naming alleged co-conspirators who seem to make up this INA team. First, there's Moneyboy Trey. His legal name is apparently Mark Avington.
Moneyboy Trey.
Yeah.
Okay, what's his role?
He's described as a confirmed and very active collaborator. He was actually the narrator on a video that contained explicit threats directed at Mr. Hall.
So very public involvement.
Yes, but the coordination wasn't just public. The sources state that Mr. Hall actually has proof evidence of direct private messages between Mark Avington and Jedidiah Brown. DMs.
Private DMs, so that shows clear behind-the-scenes coordination.
That's the implication, yes. It suggests private planning to achieve the conspiracy's alleged goals.
Okay, who else is named in the sources as part of this network?
Next, we have someone whose inclusion is particularly alarming, given her background. Mary Avant, who also seems to go by Carolyn Avant or the nickname Mama Mary.
Mary or Carolyn Avant. Why is her involvement alarming?
Because she's identified not only as part of Brown's team participating in the harassment, but also as an elected official and, get this, a former police officer.
Wow, an elected official and former cop involved in online harassment campaigns.
That's what the sources allege. And having someone with that kind of background involved could lend a false sense of legitimacy to INA's operation, but her alleged actions were anything but legitimate, according to the reports.
What did she allegedly do?
She publicly challenged Mr. Hall, taunted him basically, and then made an explicit physical threat. Said she would buy a plane ticket and fly to Oklahoma to confront him face to face if he didn't come to her location.
A threat to travel interstate for a confrontation from an elected official.
Allegedly, yes. When someone holding public office allegedly engages in that kind of behavior, making interstate threats, it really underscores the perceived seriousness and the reach of this alleged conspiracy.
It definitely moves beyond just random internet trolls.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have coordination, public figures involved. What about direct payment for actions? You mentioned unlawful acts earlier.
Yes, and this brings us to the hired help aspect.
Yeah.
Specifically, an individual known as Cooking with Frank.
Cooking with Frank. What's the connection there?
This is a really crucial piece of evidence for proving that unlawful act element of the conspiracy. The sources document that Jedidiah Brown allegedly paid Frank $50.
$50?
Yes, via Cap app. And the payment was specifically to create a defamatory video attacking Mr. Hall. Brown even promoted Frank's channel live on his own stream, telling his audience how to send Frank money.
Hold on. So there's a documented payment specifically for creating a defamatory video. That seems legally very significant.
It is. It potentially shifts this from just, someone expressing a negative opinion, which might be protected speech, to paid, organized libel conducted as part of a larger scheme.
So that $50 Cash App payment is direct proof of financial collusion, paying someone to commit an unlawful act, like libel.
That's likely how it will be framed legally, yes. It solidifies the idea that this wasn't just criticism, it was allegedly a commercial transaction within the conspiracy, using the organization's funds, however small, to intentionally harm Mr. Hall.
Okay. And who's doing the day-to-day legwork, the constant online stuff? You mentioned an investigation team.
Right. This group, sometimes called moderators, sometimes the CIU, which starts to stand for Cyber Investigations Unit, they appear to be the operational arm, the ones carrying out the persistent harassment.
And Brown acknowledges their role.
Openly, he's admitted his moderators are key to the harassment done on behalf of INA. And we see clear coordination there, too. Some moderators apparently work for both Jedidiah Brown and Moneyboy Trey.
Ah, so shared personnel between the key figures.
Exactly. It signals a really intertwined structure seemingly dedicated to this harassment campaign. Brown even boasts about his veteran team who, quote, leave no stone unturned when they're targeting someone.
And the targeting wasn't just focused solely on Mr. Hall himself, was it? It spread outwards.
Correct. The conspiracy seemed to try and isolate him professionally by attacking his business relationships.
Okay.
The sources detail quite extensive harassment aimed at a colleague, Burgundy Blue Commentary. Her real name is apparently Lolita Nicole Hayes.
And why was she targeted?
Explicitly because she refused to publicly denounce Mr. Hall's business. It was punitive. Moneyboy Trey reportedly even admitted to harassing her every single time she went live online.
So it wasn't just a personal vendetta against Hall, but a strategy to damage his professional network.
It certainly looks like a strategic attempt to destabilize his whole situation. And it didn't stop there. Jedidiah Brown and his associates have also been accused of making threats against that YouTube channel, Random News.
Random News. Wait, that's the channel that exposed the video of Brown's fight with Amir Shakur.
The very same one. So it looks like an effort to silence critics and suppress information that doesn't fit their narrative. Anyone who exposes them or supports their target becomes a target themselves.
Okay, if we tie all this together, the coordination, the payments, the targeting of associates, we have to come back to the why. You mentioned financial motivation earlier. Is this really just about money?
According to Brown's own words, allegedly yes. That seems to be the critical driver, reframing the whole thing not as activism but as a business scheme.
What did he say? What was the admission?
He made a statement that's potentially incredibly damaging legally. He explicitly said his goal was financial, that he, quote, wants a percentage of Mr. Hall's earnings, and that he intended to make money off me, referring to Mr. Hall.
Wants a percentage. That sounds less like advocacy and more like attempted extortion.
It certainly puts the alleged harassment in a very different, much more calculated light. It suggests the goal wasn't just to argue, but to profit from causing harm.
And they didn't just stop at harassment. They actually tried to commercialize the defamation itself.
They did. They created and promoted merchandise. Things like a clothing line called V-Knots, which actually featured Mr. Hall's face on it.
His face on merchandise sold by the people harassing him.
Exactly. Brown publicly confirmed this was a commercial venture, so they were allegedly turning the personal attacks and reputational damage into a product line, trying to make money directly from harming Mr. Hall.
And the money raised for INA's investigations, was that linked to the harassment too?
It appears so. We have evidence showing Jedidiah Brown soliciting funds specifically for these investigations, and some of his followers openly stated online that they paid a membership fee precisely because they wanted to see Mr. Hall harassed.
Wow. So people were paying into INA specifically for the harassment.
That's what the evidence suggests. It points towards INA operating a kind of pay-to-harass model, funded by those same questionable fundraising habits we saw earlier, all fueling this ongoing alleged conspiracy against Mr. Hall.
This brings us to maybe the most serious, legally dangerous part of this whole situation. The overt act. You mentioned unlawful acts are part of conspiracy, but this seems like a major escalation.
It absolutely is. When the alleged actions move from online harassment to premeditated physical threats involving crossing state lines, you potentially enter the realm of federal crime. We're talking about the trip to Oklahoma in May 2024.
Right, the Oklahoma trip. What happened there?
This was the point where the alleged conspiracy arguably stopped being just digital noise and became a documented, real-world physical threat. Jedidiah Brown and members of his team traveled from Chicago down to Oklahoma City.
There's proof of this travel.
Yes, a confirmed flight ticket exists, according to the sources. And the timing is really significant, adding to the sense of malicious intent. They flew down on Mother's Day, May 12th, 2024.
Mother's Day. And their purpose in going to Oklahoma City was?
According to Brown's own public statements, it was specifically to seek a physical confrontation with Mr. Hall.
He said that publicly. What was his stated goal?
His words were aggressive and unambiguous. He said he intended to, quote, embarrass this man's existence and cut off the head of every snake. It wasn't framed as a discussion. It was framed as a plan for physical intimidation.
And doing this on Mother's Day. Knowing Mr. Hall would likely be with his family, that seems incredibly calculated. We should also mention Mr. Hall's wife is a government official.
Exactly. That context is crucial. Brown himself admitted he planned it for Mother's Day and explicitly said he didn't care about Mr. Hall's wife or children being present. The goal seemed to be maximum disruption and emotional distress.
Intentionally targeting the family, especially the family of a government official, on a holiday. That feels like it goes way beyond a typical dispute.
Legally, it significantly strengthens the potential claim for intentional infliction of emotional distress, or IIE. For an IID claim, the conduct usually has to be considered extreme and outrageous by community standards.
And flying across state lines to confront someone's family, including a government official on Mother's Day, that probably qualifies as extreme and outrageous.
It certainly seems to meet that threshold. It's designed to violate the victim's sense of safety and peace, especially within their home, what lawyers sometimes call a domicile violation.
Now, Brown later tried to spin this, didn't he? He claimed Mr. Hall had invited him down for mutual combat.
Yes, that was the narrative he tried to push afterwards. A false narrative, according to the sources.
What was Mr. Hall's actual response to Brown saying he was coming to Oklahoma?
His response was purely defensive. He stated clearly that because it was Mother's Day, he would be attending church with his wife and family. He was essentially stating his priority was protecting his family from this interstate threat.
And how did Brown react to that?
He mocked it, twisted Mr. Hall's defensive posture and desire to be with his family into some kind of cowardice, used it as more fuel for the harassment campaign.
And what about the potential legal consequences? Did Mr. Hall mention involving law enforcement?
He did. Mr. Hall stated he would call the FBI given the interstate nature of the threat.
And Brown's reaction to that is very telling.
Extremely telling. Brown's response was again mockery, but that mocking reply essentially confirmed that he knew Mr. Hall viewed his travel plan as a potential federal crime.
So he knew it was being perceived as a serious, possibly federal offense, but continued anyway.
Yes. By acknowledging the FBI mention, even mockingly, and still mobilizing his team, sources mention them looking for a rental car to potentially go to Mr. Hall's home, he demonstrated clear intent, despite knowing the potential legal severity. That intent is vital for the conspiracy case.
Okay, so that's the physical interstate threat aspect. But the overt act wasn't just physical, right? There was a digital component too.
Correct. There's also clear evidence alleged of doxing and cyberstalking carried out by Brown's INA team. That's the digital side of the overt act.
What kind of doxing?
Brown's own team reportedly admitted to cyberstalking Mr. Hall's family members online. And even more concretely, there's documentation of an email.
An email?
Yes, an email sent from the investigations unit, presumably INA's unit, to a third party. We won't say the private information it contained, but the subject line itself was aggressive and clearly related to Mr. Hall's residence. Is this house for sale?
Wow. Sending someone's private info like that to intimidate.
It's a classic doxing tactic. It's another clear, unlawful act committed seemingly in furtherance of the conspiracy's goals. It serves as more critical evidence showing organization, coordination, and malicious intent.
Okay, so we have the history, the illegal structure, the network, the financial motive, the threats, the Oklahoma trip, the doxing. It all seems to build towards this one specific event.
Right. It culminates in what might be the single most damaging piece of evidence for Brown and INA, a public discussion.
The one where Jedidiah Brown actually went on LNC, a platform, specifically to talk to Mr. Hall.
That's the one. And it turned out to be, well, essentially a public confession booth, though maybe unintentionally. It was incredibly incriminating.
Why was it so bad for him? What happened during that discussion?
Several things. First, it really highlighted his reliance on misinformation, especially regarding legal matters. And second, it led to these spontaneous admissions that just seemed to solidify the legal claims against him and his whole team.
Let's start with the misinformation. What was he saying that was false?
He kept insisting, repeatedly and falsely, that Mr. Hall's separate federal lawsuit, the one called Hall v. YouTube LLC, was either dismissed outright or was in its processing to be dismissed.
And that wasn't true.
Not at all. It was a deliberate lie, seemingly aimed at discrediting Mr. Hall publicly, right as this whole harassment campaign was really heating up, trying to make it look like Mr. Hall's legal efforts were failing.
But then Mr. Hall did something pretty clever, didn't he? During the live discussion.
He did. He clearly anticipated this line of attack. Mr. Hall actually pulled up the official court docket for the Hall v. YouTube case live on screen for everyone to see.
Pulled up the actual court record. What did it show?
It showed unequivocally that the case was active. Yes, the judge had dismissed one specific count, but crucially had granted Mr. Hall leave to amend his tort claims, which means the case was absolutely still alive, still being pursued. The core claims were moving forward.
So, irrefutable proof on screen that Brown was lying. How did Brown react when confronted with the actual court docket?
He just refused to acknowledge it, flatly denied the reality right in front of him, continued sticking to his false claim, even with the evidence displayed for all to see.
Wow. And when he was pressed on why he was spreading this false information, he didn't own up to it.
Not at all. He immediately deflected. And this is where he arguably confessed to the entire conspiracy structure.
What did he say? How did he deflect?
When backed into a corner about the source of his false legal claims, he said, and this is a direct quote from the sources, I say what I'm told. That's what I was told in my briefing.
He said, I say what I'm told. And mentioned a briefing.
Yes. He explicitly stated that the lies he was repeating came directly from his structured, organized briefing team, his INA team.
That is astonishing. That sounds like a direct admission of the meeting of the minds.
It's about as close as you can get. In that moment, trying to save himself, he effectively threw his entire alleged illegal PI unit all under the fucking bus, as one source put it. He identified them as the source of his defamatory misinformation, confirming the existence of that coordinated planning structure.
It's just incredible. But the self-incrimination didn't even stop there, did it? He went further.
No, it got worse for him. He then seemed to double down on his worldview, openly admitting that his personal form of advocacy includes physical violence.
He admitted to using violence as advocacy. How did he phrase it?
It links right back to that Amir Shakur fight we discussed earlier, the celebration of violence. During this LNC discussion, Brown was explicitly quoted stating that his approach involves violence towards people who disagree with him. The quote was, "If I think that your opinion disagrees from mine, I will kick your ass."
I will kick your ass. As a form of advocacy.
Precisely. And the host of that discussion immediately jumped on it, pointing out how that statement provides even more evidence supporting the civil claims against him. It highlights this pattern. When faced with intellectual disagreement or facts he doesn't like, the default is allegedly physical assault.
That statement seems to confirm the malicious intent behind the threats, doesn't it? It's not just hyperbole if he explicitly links violence to disagreement.
It certainly strengthens that argument significantly. And finally, throughout this whole period, and particularly in that interview, we need to address the language used, the persistent, nasty, derogatory stuff.
Right, the name-calling and harassment. You mentioned middies earlier.
Yes, the continuous, seemingly obsessive use of that derogatory term, middies, for Daché Halseuner, that alone demonstrates a clear, sustained campaign intended to inflict severe emotional distress.
It went beyond name-calling
Yeah.
into more serious territory.
It did. Jedidiah Brown allegedly crossed a major line by making deeply offensive, sexually charged insinuations about Mr. Hall and his wife again, the government official. He even threatened at one point to release someone's sex tape.
Threatening to release a sex tape. That's extreme.
Extremely. That kind of conduct, the constant derogatory slurs, the sexual harassment aimed at the plaintiff and his spouse, the threats of releasing private material, that is exactly the type of extreme and outrageous behavior that forms the bedrock of an intentional infliction of emotional distress, IID claim. It's far beyond typical online disagreements or insults. Hashtag tag outro.
Okay, so if we step back and synthesize everything we've just gone through, the sheer volume of evidence detailed in the sources, it really does seem to paint a very comprehensive picture. One that appears to strongly support this impending civil conspiracy case against Jedidiah Brown and, well, his whole network.
It really lays out the argument quite clearly, hitting those key legal elements we talked about at the start.
Right, let's recap those elements. First, the agreement, the meeting of the minds.
Confirmed, arguably, by Brown's own repeated admissions about having daily briefings with his illegal PI team. Plus, you have the documented coordination, the DMs between him and Moneyboy Trey, the shared moderators, the specific instructions given to people like Cooking with Frank, the involvement of Mayor Carolyn Avant. It points to a structured agreement.
Okay, element one seems covered. Second, the unlawful acts, the things they actually did.
And the list there is long and serious. You've got operating an unlicensed private investigation business, which is illegal in itself. Then there's the defamation, escalating to paid libel with the Frank payment. Alleged abuse of the DMCA system for censorship. Persistent doxing, sharing private information.
And crucially, the explicit documented threats of physical violence, including the one involving interstate travel.
Exactly. That interstate element potentially brings federal law into play, making the unlawful acts even more severe.
And finally, element three, the damages, the harm caused.
Stemming directly from this allegedly organized, coordinated, and commercially motivated harassment campaign. The damages include, pretty clearly, grounds for intentional infliction of emotional distress based on the extreme and outrageous conduct. There's also the obvious reputational harm from the widespread libel. And likely documented financial loss as well, given the attacks on business relationships and the merchandise exploiting Mr. Hall's image.
So this deep dive really shows how a pattern, an alleged pattern anyway, of questionable fundraising going back years can apparently fuel something much bigger. A sophisticated digital attack operation that then escalates dramatically.
It escalates into documented, real-world threats of physical violence, invasion of privacy, targeting families, all forming the basis for what could be a very significant federal legal claim.
When you connect all those dots, especially the financial angle,
Yeah.
you mentioned the money raised for that headquarters that never existed.
Right, the $3,000 plus for the Phantom headquarters.
The $50 payment to Frank for the libel video.
The so-called membership fees, people paid specifically to see Mr. Hall harassed.
When you put all that together, it raises a really serious ethical question, maybe even a legal one, that goes beyond just Brown and his immediate team.
It absolutely does. It forces you to ask about the platforms and the enablers.
Which leads us to our final provocative thought for you, the listener, to consider. Given that this alleged conspiracy appears to have monetized harassment through direct fundraising, through merchandise, what responsibility do the major social media platforms bear?
Especially if they knowingly hosted this activity, promoted the streams where funds were solicited, and facilitated the collection of money that was explicitly stated to be used for supporting an alleged civil conspiracy, one engaging in unlawful acts and threats across state lines.
It's a huge question. Could platform liability become a major factor in cases like this? Answering that might fundamentally reshape how we think about accountability for what happens online, especially when it spills over so violently into the real world.
Got you, bitch!
Hey, yo, lesson here, babe. You come at the king, you best not miss.
Big, 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 big man. That's